Rebekah Roth here again, and I'm going to talk about something a little different this time, although it does have something to do with 9/11. But I've also been following the Charlie Kirk incident, and of course I always have 9/11 in my mind. And one of the things, actually two of the things that I've discovered in researching 9/11 is I learned about psychological operations and something else called a false flag. They're also both of them are kind of similar, but they're different. So I want to just touch on that because we're about to see another one, I think. Do you know how to tell if an incident in front of you is a psychological operation or a false flag? I sure didn't. So let's take a look. Keep Charlie Kirk's assassination in your mind and 9/11 as you hear this. Now let's take a look to see what the difference is. In a psyop or psychological operation, you should look for messages that follow the incident that provoke strong emotions, manipulate narratives, often through the use of censorship. Oh, this is starting to sound familiar now. And amplification of a message. There's also a lot of discouragement toward anyone in dissent or, heaven forbid, asking questions. So when something happens, and I guarantee you that it will, something is going to happen pretty soon. You'll want to analyze your emotions and analyze your emotional reaction. Check for a lack of credibility in follow-up. Look for and recognize a coordinated messaging. You'll see it on social media, mainstream media, maybe even the president. If you see people like Laura Loomer telling you that Islamists are about to strike, and Sarah Adams tweeting, telling you the similar message, and then something happens, and Bibi Netanyahu comes on in US TV and blames Islam, well, you kind of been fed. So you can kind of see how they set the stage. That should get your attention, and you should be thinking that you're witnessing an operation. Those people that are broadcasting the messaging will often use the very same language. And so pay close attention. And often they'll set the stage weeks or months in advance so you know immediately who they want you to blame. Keep your eyes open for narrative control. Question the timing. And does the story coincide with a major event, a crisis or an election? Like when, let's just say, Obama pretended to kill Osama bin Laden, but he'd been dead for 10 years. But all of the media and all the politicians pretended that they'd missed those newscasts in December of 2001, when he actually died. Track the narratives. Try to follow up with real, authentic information. I know it's hard, but sometimes a place like Telegram, you might find better information than the mainstream media. Real events will always continue to update you. If it's a psyop, you won't hear a thing. That reminds me of Butler. When somebody tried to shoot President Trump, we still don't have any details about that kid. Beware of conformity pressure, and that is, I'll give you an example. When George W. Bush came out after 9/11 saying, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. You better conform. With the Charlie Kirk incident, we had a prime minister of a foreign country come out and tell you and me on US TV that Charlie loved Israel, maybe even more than he loved America. And everything that Israel did, he loved. He just loved it. But a couple of weeks later, what did we find out? Well, I would say Candace Owens told us that Charlie was turning away from Israel, and he'd made a decision to walk away from some really big Jewish donors. They were losing control of Charlie. Now let's get to a false flag. You can sort of see the difference and the similarities. To recognize a false flag, you'll want to look for signs like a lack of credible evidence. Well, I'm thinking of 30-06 not blowing someone's head off right now, or conflicting official narratives. 9/11 was full of these. Or even an unlikely motive for the perpetrator. Lack of forensic evidence is always there, and questionable witness accounts. A sudden shift in political action following the event. Remember how they turned Charlie's funeral into a Trump rally? For example, let me tell you, on 9/11, we had radical Muslims that didn't follow any of the religious lifestyle guidelines of a Muslim. The media told us all about they were radical Muslims, but that's not how they lived. They told us Marwan and Muhammad Atta were loud, obnoxious, drinking alcohol, snorting cocaine. Muhammad Atta was even living with a pink-haired stripper. They were gambling, etc., etc. We also had initial eyewitnesses 9/11 that said the plane that hit the South Tower, they were on the ground right below it, was not a commercial airliner. Well, those witnesses and their statements went away really fast. Never saw them again. We also had supposed pilots that couldn't even fly a Cessna, taking the 757 out like it was a fighter jet. These things, they're not coherent. Also, back to Charlie Kirk incident. This year, many people were right on the verge of questioning 9/11 in a big way. And this happened the day before the anniversary, the 24th anniversary of 9/11. After Charlie Kirk's incident, nobody was talking about 9/11. And certainly weren't talking about it being a possible Mossad or Israeli operation. Even Tucker Carlson had a 5-part series on 9/11 that was scheduled to drop the day after Charlie's incident. And Tucker Carlson pulled it. He waited a week or two before he started those to go out. Also, with a false flag, there's a flood of misinformation. So you can see on a false flag, you'll want to watch for like suspiciously obvious clues, like remember Muhammad Atta's luggage had his will and testament and flight manuals in Arabic. They told us this. It didn't get on the plane, but well, nobody ever questioned why would a 30-something-year-old Egyptian be traveling around with a will, and if he didn't know how to fly the 767, why would he check that bag with those manuals in it? Anyway, I digress. It just doesn't make any sense. You get my point. If the guy had never flown a 767, chances are he'd want that manual, at least, in his carry-on bags, right? I mean, am I the only one along this line? Okay, well, why would he have a will with him anyway? Why not have it in his safe at home in Egypt? Who flies around with their will? I mean, I flew for a living. I didn't fly around with my will. Anyway, we're not supposed to ask questions. Remember that. In short, let me just say that a false flag is done to deceive an adversary by framing them for a harmful action. The attack is blamed on the opponent. Got it? Like 9/11 was blamed on every Muslim. False flag's a tactic that's used to execute a psychological operation. See how they work? Hand in hand. A psyop is done to influence or to change the belief and the behavior of the target audience. They use a wide range of techniques like propaganda, media campaigns, and fake news, and probably Bibi Netanyahu. I bet you're thinking that because I am. And to tie it all together, psyops can also include a false flag operation as a component. So in other words, both of them can be used, the psychological operation and a false flag. They can run parallel, intertwine, and both be used at an event. So beware of people out there that they want to argue with you that an event is either a false flag or a psyop, because they really can and usually are used together. Just terminology. Watch for a rush to judgment also, and a narrative being pushed. You know, Charlie loved everything Israel did, like that's a narrative. And another event like the anniversary of 9/11 or something they want to divert you from, or maybe an election or something like that. When the next big thing happens, and I guarantee you it will, pay attention and maybe even write down your emotions if you feel them. Other things that are going on, elections, wars, especially when the United States is being drawn into a war, like let's say with Russia and Ukraine, there's a false flag waiting to happen over there. Whether it's an assassination, an explosion, or something else, pay attention to all the details and be aware that both types of operations are played out on us by the deep state, by intelligence agencies, all the time. They want to do that to get us to think one way about a group of people, about a country, about a religion, whatever. Always look at who benefits. That's the key. Who benefits? From just what just happened, who benefited right away, along with who's pushing what agenda. And I hope you spend some time thinking about this, because this is how our country and the intelligence community does manipulate us. They use the TV, they control the media. I know it's a lot to think about, so I just want to say this on closing. Just keep thinking, because they don't want you to.